My grandfather was my rock when no one else was there for me. Every weekend at his house was an escape from my troubled home life. When he passed away last month, I was devastated. I never expected him to leave me his beautiful Victorian home in his will. My family barely visited him when he was alive, but suddenly they all had opinions about his decision. When they invited me to a family talk, I knew something was wrong. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button before I tell you what happened next. Growing up, my grandfather was the one consistent figure in my life. While my parents were busy working and focusing on my high-achieving siblings, Grandpa was the one who showed up to my school plays and baseball games. His Victorian house on Maple Street became my sanctuary. Every weekend I would bike over and help him with yard work, house repairs, or simply sit on the porch swing listening to his stories of the past. Those were the moments I cherished most in my childhood. Thomas and Amanda, my older siblings, rarely visited. Thomas would occasionally stop by during holidays with expensive gifts, but would spend most of the time on his phone. Amanda would visit even less frequently, usually only when she needed money or a place to stay temporarily during her college years. Grandpa never complained about their absence, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes when family gatherings had empty chairs. The house itself was special. Built in the 1920s, it had character and history that modern homes lacked. Hardwood floors that creaked in specific spots, a wraparound porch where Grandpa taught me to whittle wood figures, and a massive oak tree in the backyard, with a tire swing he installed when I was 8. The neighborhood had become increasingly valuable over the years, with property values tripling as the area became trendy. My own life was not exactly going according to plan. After graduating with an English degree, I struggled to find stable employment. My apartment rent consumed nearly 70% of my monthly income, and my dream of becoming a published author seemed to slip further away with each rejection letter. Yet despite my financial struggles, I never missed a weekend with Grandpa, especially after his health began to decline. When he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure 3 years ago, I started driving him to doctor appointments, picking up his medications, and doing his grocery shopping. I even installed a wheelchair ramp at his house when mobility became an issue. My parents and siblings would call occasionally to check in, but the physical care and emotional support fell to me. The dynamic with my family had always been strained. Thomas became a successful corporate attorney at a prestigious firm in Boston, and Amanda followed a lucrative career path in investment banking. Family dinners inevitably turned into showcases of their accomplishments, while my parents would carefully avoid asking about my struggling writing career or part-time jobs. Thomas would often suggest careers I should pursue, instead of presenting unsolicited advice with the same authoritative tone he used in court. Amanda would one-up any small success I mentioned with her latest promotion or bonus. My parents never explicitly said they were disappointed in me, but their proud smiles were reserved for announcements from my siblings. I became the family member they called when they needed a favor, but excluded from decision-making discussions. When Grandpa started requiring more intensive care, I suggested to my parents that we create a schedule so everyone could help. The conversation quickly devolved into excuses about busy work schedules and geographic distance. Thomas lived only 30 minutes away but claimed his caseload was too demanding. Amanda lived in the same city but was always traveling for work. Once again, the responsibility defaulted to me, the family member, with the most flexible schedule and the least important career in their eyes. I did not mind caring for Grandpa. Our bond deepened during his final years, as I spent even more time at his house. He shared family stories I had never heard, taught me to cook his secret recipes, and we watched countless classic films together. During one particularly emotional evening, he confided that he worried about my future after he was gone. I assured him I would be fine, though privately I shared his concerns about my unstable financial situation. The call came at 3:22 in the morning. Grandpa had suffered a massive heart attack and was gone before the ambulance could arrive. His neighbor found him and called emergency services, then contacted me as the emergency contact listed on his refrigerator. I sat alone in his hospital room for hours, waiting for my family to arrive after I notified them. The funeral was small but dignified, just as Grandpa would have wanted. I handled most of the arrangements since I knew his preferences best. My parents arrived the night before the service while Thomas and Amanda flew in that morning. Throughout the ceremony, I noticed Thomas checking his watch repeatedly, and Amanda stepping outside to take phone calls. Their eulogies felt hollow and generic, focusing on childhood memories from decades ago, rather than any recent connections. After the service, while we gathered at my parents' house, Thomas brought up the estate for the first time. He asked casually if anyone knew what Grandpa had planned for the house, noting that properties in that neighborhood were selling quickly. Amanda joined in, wondering aloud if we should use a real estate agent she knew. I remained silent, uncertain of the details myself, as Grandpa had never explicitly told me his plans. 3 days later, we all gathered at the office of Mr. Jeffrey's Grandpa's attorney. The small conference room felt stuffy, as we sat around an oval table waiting for the reading of the will. Mr. Grandpa's attorney, Jeffries, entered with a leather portfolio and a somber expression, appropriate for the occasion. After the standard legal preamble, he began listing the distributions of personal property and financial assets. Most items were divided as expected, with family heirlooms going to various relatives and modest financial gifts to a few close friends and his church. Then came the statement that changed everything. Mr. Jeffries cleared his throat and read, "In regards to my primary residence at 523 Maple Street, including all property and contents therein, I leave this entirely to my grandson, Lewis Henderson, who has shown me true compassion, care when others would not." The silence in the room was deafening. I felt everyone staring at me, but I kept my eyes on the framed law degrees hanging on the opposite wall. Mr. Jeffries continued reading, explaining that Grandpa had included a personal statement about his decision. "Louis has been the only family member to consistently be present in my life, especially during my illness. While others were too busy with their own lives to spend time with an old man, Louis sacrificed his own comfort and opportunities to ensure mine. This house should belong to someone who truly loves it and the memories it contains. Additionally, I know Louis needs this security to pursue his writing dreams, which I have always believed in." Thomas was the first to break the silence. "Is this some kind of joke?" he demanded, his attorney persona taking over. Amanda shot me an accusatory glare, as if I had somehow manipulated the situation. My parents exchanged concerned glances, but said nothing. Mr. Jeffries calmly explained that the will was properly executed with 2 independent witnesses and all legal requirements satisfied. The house was free and clear of any mortgages, and the property taxes were paid through the current year. He handed me a large envelope containing the deed keys and other relevant documents. The market value of the property was conservatively estimated at $800,000, making it by far the most significant asset in Grandpa's estate. As we left the office, the facade of family unity completely collapsed. Thomas cornered me in the parking lot, his face flushed with anger. "You played him," he hissed. "You saw an opportunity and took advantage of a sick old man." I was too stunned to defend myself, but Amanda quickly joined the attack. "Did you really think we would not figure out what you did?" she asked. "All those convenient visits and sudden devotion when his health declined. Real subtle Louis." My parents stood awkwardly to the side, not directly accusing me, but not defending me either. Mom eventually suggested we all take some time to process the news before discussing further, but the damage was already done. The drive home was filled with phone notifications as family group texts exploded with speculation and thinly veiled accusations. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure intensified. Thomas called daily, alternating between legal threats and appeals to family unity. He mentioned terms like undue influence and diminished capacity. Amanda took a more emotional approach, sending long messages about childhood memories and how Grandpa would want us to share equally. My parents called less frequently, but always with the same message. Perhaps I should consider what was best for the whole family. The property itself became the center of every conversation. Thomas mentioned a developer interested in the lot. Amanda suggested selling and splitting the proceeds would solve everything. No one seemed to care about the home itself or what it had meant to Grandpa. No one mentioned the countless weekends I spent there or the care I had provided. In their eyes, I was simply an obstacle to their inheritance. Then came the message from my mother, asking me to come over for dinner on Friday to talk things through as a family. The formal tone was unusual, and I immediately sensed a coordinated effort was underway. Still, I agreed to attend, hoping some rational discussion might be possible. Walking into my parents' house that Friday evening felt like entering a courtroom where I was the defendant. Thomas sat at the dining table with a portfolio of papers spread before him. Amanda stood near the kitchen island, arms crossed and expression determined. My parents sat together on one side, leaving a single chair opposite everyone else clearly meant for me. I expected tension, but not the palpable hostility that filled the room. No one bothered with typical family dinner preparations, or even the pretense of casual conversation. This was clearly an ambush, designed to intimidate and pressure me into submission. Amanda was the first to approach, her investment banker's smile firmly in place. That smile that appeared whenever she was about to close a deal. She placed a hand on my shoulder and guided me to the isolated chair. "Louis, we all agree. It's only fair. We all benefit from Grandpa's estate," she said with practiced sincerity. "We are family, after all." Thomas nodded along, adjusting his tie like he was about to present to a jury. He had brought visual aids, including a property assessment, market analysis, and what appeared to be a pre-drafted agreement for me to sign. "We understand you had a special relationship with Grandpa." Thomas began, his voice slipping into his professional tone. "But surely you can see how this situation creates an imbalance in the family. Dad and Mom always intended for their estate to be divided equally among their children. Grandpa's decision undermines that principle." I remained silent, watching this performance unfold. My father cleared his throat and added his part to the clearly rehearsed intervention. "Son, your grandfather loved all his grandchildren. Whatever led to this decision, we know he would not want to create division in the family. He was always about bringing people together." My mother nodded tearfully, the good cop to everyone else's bad cop. I noticed how carefully they all avoided mentioning the years of care I had provided, or the absence of their visits. Their narrative conveniently erased any justification for Grandpa's decision. Thomas slid papers across the table toward me. "I have taken the liberty of drawing up a fair resolution," he explained. "You transfer the property to a family trust. We sell it at market value and split the proceeds 3 ways. The trust covers any tax implications. We could have the whole thing resolved within 30 days. Amanda quickly added her financial expertise. "I have already spoken to potential buyers. We could get well above asking price, especially if we make a few cosmetic updates before listing." They continued outlining their plan, as if my agreement was a mere formality. Thomas mentioned how this approach would avoid any costly legal battles. Amanda detailed how my share would still be substantial enough for a down payment on a more appropriate property. "I am concerned about your financial literacy, Louis," she added, with thinly veiled condescension. "This windfall could disappear quickly without proper planning. I can help you invest it wisely." My parents watched anxiously, clearly, hoping I would simply acquiesce to keep the peace. They had always prioritized family harmony over fairness, especially when that harmony meant giving in to Thomas and Amanda's demands. After listening to their proposal, I finally spoke. "So you have already planned how to spend the money from selling Grandpa's house?" Without even consulting me, the legal owner Thomas straightened, ready for this challenge. "This is precisely why we are consulting you now. We are offering a clean drama, free resolution. Consider the alternatives, Louis. Do you really want this to get messy?" The threat hung in the air. I thought about Grandpa, how he would have handled this situation. He always told me that sometimes standing your ground was more important than keeping the peace. With that in mind, I reached into my backpack and removed a sealed envelope. "Then I guess you have not read this part," I said calmly, opening the envelope to reveal additional pages from Grandpa's will that Mr. Jeffries had given only to me. I began reading aloud. "If my decision to leave my home to Louis causes discord among my family, please share the following with them. I have kept a detailed journal for the past 5 years, documenting all visits, phone calls, and assistance received during my illness. Louis visited 112 times last year alone. Thomas visited 3 times. Amanda twice. The room fell silent as I continued. I specifically discussed my intentions with my doctor to establish my sound mind and judgment in this matter. I also recorded a video statement explaining my decision, which my attorney holds in the event my will is contested. Any legal challenge will result in this becoming part of public record. I looked up to see shocked expressions around the table. I have the journal right here, I added, placing Grandpa's leather-bound notebook beside the will. He documented everything, including comments made by family members about visiting being a burden or his house being outdated. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Thomas's professional demeanor cracked, revealing the raw anger beneath. "You think you are so clever," he snapped. "You manipulated him for years for this payoff. You might have the house now, but remember who your family is. When your writing career keeps failing, who do you think will be there for you?" Amanda was equally venomous. "This is why you have always been the outsider in this family," she hissed. "You play the victim while scheming behind our backs." Grandpa was senile at the end. Everyone saw it. I stood up, gathering the documents. Attacking Grandpa's mental capacity is a dangerous argument, I warned. His doctor provided a sworn statement about his competence specifically to prevent this kind of challenge. But feel free to pursue it if you want those medical records and Grandpa's video statement played in open court. My father, always the peacemaker, tried to intervene. "Surely we can discuss this rationally without threats." I was done pretending. "These are not my threats, Dad. These are the protective measures Grandpa put in place, because he anticipated exactly this reaction. He knew his own children and grandchildren better than you think." My mother began crying her go-to response when confrontations escalated beyond her control. Amanda moved to comfort her, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. "Look what you are doing to this family," she accused. I laughed without humor. "What am I doing? You all invited me here to pressure me into giving up what Grandpa legally left to me. You prepared documents, contacted buyers, and planned how to spend the money without even speaking to me first. And I am the one damaging the family, Thomas. Never one to admit defeat, switched tactics. Fine, keep the house. But do not come crying to us when the property taxes and maintenance costs overwhelm you. That place needs a new roof and heating system. Without our help, you will be underwater within a year." With that final prediction of failure, I gathered my things and headed for the door. My mother called after me, but I did not turn back. As I reached my car, I heard the front door slam and saw Thomas storming to his own vehicle, phone already pressed to his ear. I wondered which lawyer colleague he was calling to discuss options for contesting the will. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of emotions. Relief at standing my ground mixed with grief over the family relationships that had just imploded. Yet beneath it all was a strange sense of peace. For the first time, I had honored what Grandpa wanted instead of what would keep the family artificially united. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Thomas had indeed consulted with several estate attorneys, only to learn that Grandpa's precautions made any challenge nearly impossible. His final message was a single line: "You will regret this decision." Amanda took a different approach, switching from anger to attempted manipulation. Her messages painted a picture of family gatherings I would now be excluded from, support I could no longer count on, and the loneliness that awaited me. The subtext was clear: conformity was the price of family inclusion. My parents vacillated between pleading for reconciliation and expressing their disappointment in my selfishness. No mention was made of Thomas and Amanda's behavior, or the fact that I had been the only one caring for Grandpa. In their narrative, I was still the problem child disrupting family harmony. That weekend, I visited the house for the first time as its owner. Walking through the rooms alone felt both liberating and heartbreaking. Every corner held memories of Grandpa, yet his absence was palpable. I spent hours just sitting in his favorite armchair, looking through photo albums, and processing the whirlwind of recent events. The legal transition of ownership proceeded despite Thomas's efforts to find loopholes. Mr. Jeffries called to inform me that Thomas had requested copies of all estate documents and had even attempted to speak with the witnesses to the will. All his efforts had been rebuffed as legally inappropriate. The house was officially transferred to my name 3 weeks after the family confrontation. As Thomas had predicted, the responsibilities of home ownership were significant. The property taxes were substantial, and the house did indeed need repairs. The roof had several leaks, and the heating system was wildly inefficient. Yet rather than feeling overwhelmed, I found purpose in preserving Grandpa's home. I took a second job bartending evenings to cover expenses, and slowly began making necessary improvements. The most unexpected change came in my writing. I converted the sunroom into a writing studio surrounded by Grandpa's books and the view of his garden. Something about being in that space unlocked creativity I had struggled to find in my cramped apartment. I began writing daily, completing short stories, and finally making progress on my novel. Distant relatives and family friends began reaching out once news of the inheritance spread. Suddenly, cousins I barely knew wanted to reconnect, and family friends expressed interest in visiting. Their transparent motivations made me cautious, but some relationships were genuinely rekindled. Mrs. Patterson, Grandpa's next-door neighbor for 30 years, became a regular visitor, sharing stories about him I had never heard. 3 months after moving in, I discovered a box in the attic labeled, "For Louis, when I am gone." Inside was a collection of Grandpa's unpublished writings, including a partially finished memoir. Reading his words felt like having conversations with him again. Between the pages of a journal was a letter addressed to me, written in his shaky handwriting from his final months. "Louis, do not let them make you doubt yourself or my decision. This house has sheltered 5 generations of our family, and you are the only one who truly appreciates its soul. Your siblings measure worth in dollars and status. You see the value in stories and memories. I trust you to be the guardian this house deserves. And I trust this house to give you the stability to become the writer you are meant to be. Never apologize for accepting what is rightfully yours. Love, Grandpa." Those words became my anchor when doubts crept in. During the first holiday season, without both Grandpa and my immediate family, I decided to host a dinner for others who found themselves alone. Mrs. Patterson came along with several of Grandpa's old friends, and a few fellow writers I had connected with at local workshops. The house filled with conversation and laughter that Grandpa would have loved. Thomas eventually made good on his threat to pursue legal action, filing a petition to invalidate the will based on claims of undue influence. The case was quickly dismissed when Mr. Jeffries presented Grandpa's video testimony and medical affidavits. The judge reportedly admonished Thomas for wasting the court's time with a frivolous claim. The legal fees he incurred were substantial, adding financial injury to his wounded pride. My writing career saw its first real breakthrough that winter. A short story I wrote about an elderly man, and his grandson won a prestigious regional contest. The prize money was modest, but the publication credit opened doors that had previously been closed. Literary magazines began accepting my submissions, and an editor expressed interest in seeing my novel when completed. A full year passed before I had any direct contact with my immediate family. My father called on what would have been Grandpa's birthday, his voice tentative and strained. The conversation was brief and superficial, neither of us mentioning the elephant in the room. Similar calls came on major holidays, always from my parents, never my siblings. Then one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Thomas standing on the porch looking noticeably different. The power suits and perfect grooming had been replaced by casual clothes and visible fatigue. He asked if we could talk, and something in his demeanor convinced me to invite him in. We sat in the living room, the same space where Grandpa had told his stories. Thomas looked around, noting the changes I had made alongside the traditional elements I had preserved. His usual confidence was absent as he struggled to begin the conversation. "My marriage is ending," he finally said. "Turns out working 80-hour weeks and prioritizing career over everything else has consequences." I offered simple condolences, unsure where this was heading. Thomas continued explaining how the past year had forced him to reevaluate his priorities. The legal battle over the will had cost him more than money. His reputation at the firm had suffered, and the stress had accelerated problems in his marriage. While he did not explicitly apologize for his actions, there was a new humility in his words. "Grandpa was right about me," he admitted. "I measured everything in terms of assets and achievements. I cannot remember the last time I did something simply because it brought joy or comfort to another person. We talked for hours more honestly than we ever had before. Thomas shared his struggles with the competitive legal world and the constant pressure to appear successful. I spoke about my writing journey and the peace I had found in honoring Grandpa's legacy. We did not resolve all our differences or erase the hurt, but we established a fragile bridge of understanding. Before leaving, Thomas asked to see the changes I had made to the house. As we walked through each room, he shared memories I had never heard about his own childhood visits. In Grandpa's study now, my writing room, he paused to look at the framed acceptance letters for my published stories. He is probably up there somewhere, feeling pretty smug about being right, Thomas said with a small smile. You are doing exactly what he hoped you would with this place. It was the closest thing to approval I had ever received from my brother. Today marks 2 years since Grandpa left me this house and inadvertently forced me to stand up for myself against my family. The journey has not been easy, but it has been transformative. My first novel, inspired by Grandpa's unfinished memoir, will be published next spring. The advance was modest, but enough to reduce my dependence on the second job. I recently hosted a memorial gathering on the anniversary of Grandpa's passing. The house was filled with people who truly cared about him, sharing stories and keeping his memory alive. My parents attended briefly, still uncomfortable but making an effort. Thomas came with his daughter, now spending more time with her after his divorce. Amanda sent flowers, but did not appear, still maintaining her distance. The most meaningful change has been within myself. I no longer measure my worth through my family's approval or conventional success metrics. Grandpa's faith in me helped me discover faith in myself. The house provided not just financial security, but a foundation to build my own life and identity. I have established a small scholarship in Grandpa's name at the local community college for first-generation students pursuing creative writing. It feels right to extend the lifeline he threw me to others who might need similar support. Each spring, the recipient is invited to spend a writing weekend at the house, working in the same sunroom where I found my voice. My relationship with my family remains complicated. Some wounds may never fully heal, but the sharp edges of anger have softened with time. Thomas and I meet monthly for coffee, finding common ground neither of us expected. My parents visit occasionally, though conversations still carefully navigate around certain topics. Amanda remains distant, our only contact through family group messages and holiday cards. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground or given in to family pressure? The inheritance was never just about the house or its monetary value, but about honoring the wishes of someone who truly saw and supported me. Sometimes the hardest part of receiving a gift is believing you deserve it. If you have ever had to defend your worth to those who should have recognized it, leave a comment below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for themselves is not selfish but necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the most valuable inheritance is not measured in property or money, but in the courage to become who you are meant to be.